Hi, I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for joining me for this 30-minute yoga practice. I do have a yoga mat, but if you don't have one, fear not. Find a place in your house that's carpeted, or I'm standing on my living room rug. You could just use your rug as your yoga mat for today. A folded blanket is great. That's as simple as the throw blanket from your couch or a folded beach or bath towel. And 2 yoga blocks. An easy substitute for that would be 2 thick books. We'll start today in child's pose. So making your way down onto hands and knees, there are different designs for child's pose for all of us. So not everyone will feel ease and comfort sinking their hips towards their heels. Am I right? Some of us need to have our toes curled under. For some of us, too much bend or flexion in our knees doesn't feel great. So if that describes you, you can fashion your child's pose to be something with your arms in front of you that looks a little bit more like this. And sometimes taking a book or block, placing that underneath your forehead can give you a little bit of an assistance to a child's pose as well. If it's relatively comfortable for you, come onto the tops of your feet and just see where you might sit, hips towards your heels. And again, arms can reach in front of you or arms can run alongside you. We all have different ideas. And the width of your knees is also up to you. Some people like to have their knees closer. You might feel like that's a nice stretch in your low back. Other people like wider knees as a way in. So play with that. It's actually really fun to personalize these postures so that they feel right for you. It lets us get to know ourselves a little bit more that way. Then we'll turn the arrows of attention inward. Pay attention to our breath. Experience every inhale and every exhale. Maybe we add a tiny bit of a pause at the top of our inhale, tiny bit of a pause at the bottom of our exhale. And if you're able to bring your inhale and your exhale through your nostrils, that's ideal. If that's not happening, you're not doing anything wrong. Just breathe any way that you can with this same grounded awareness. We'll take 30 seconds just turning inward and breathing. Bring yourself into a hands and knees situation. And here's how we want to grow this. It will be handy when we start to do planks as well. Spread your hands wide and feel a circle to each palm connected to the ground. So you're not letting that come off the ground, especially in between your index and thumb. And then spread your fingers wide. Push the ground away, and you can feel your core engage there. So if you do this, collapse for a second, no core engagement, and everything is falling into our joints. We don't want that. Push the ground away. Your arms are certainly working their muscles, but so is your front core, right? You can feel your low belly draw in. Curl your toes under. To emphasize what we're finding here, take both knees an inch off your mat and keep pushing. And now, if you didn't feel your core before, I think you will more. 3 moments here. And then light as a feather, we place our knees back down again. We will do that 2 more times. You don't have to do it if it doesn't work for you. And if your wrists need a break, give them a shake and then come back. Here we go. Push the ground away. Either stay like this or hover your knees an inch off your mat. Pretty heavy-duty core work, and it's not a sit-up. How about that? 2 moments. And then gently, we bring our knees back onto the ground. And then 1 more time, push the ground away, maybe knees off the ground, maybe not. 3 moments. Bring your knees to your mat. Probably shimmy your knees back just a little bit. We'll make our way to down dog, but I want us to be very clear on our hips taking us there and that action of pushing the ground away, actually using our core even in down dog. So with our hips to the sky, and we'll stay on the balls of our feet, push into your hands until your hips go up and back, aiming towards that corner where the ceiling and the wall meet. And let's step our feet wide if you don't mind, so as wide as your mat. And then really do exaggerate the uplift of your hips and the pushing away of the ground. And there's kind of a lovely length to our spine, side body, front body. Walk your feet forward all the way to your hands. Feet are hip distance and parallel. And then glide your hands up your shins, ankles, maybe even up to your thighs. Inhale, lift your heart. Exhale, we fold in, but we don't round in. So it's a hinge at our hips and elongation through our spine. And then carefully, slowly, inhale, rise, reach. We've been a little upside down for a while, so I don't want you to be dizzy. Thumbs to the sky in a V shape with our arms overhead. And then arms along your side, palms face out, and we land in our mountain pose. We make sure that nothing feels like it's dizzying, as I said. We look for evenness in our breath and evenness in the way that we stand in between our 2 feet. Inhale, arms out and up, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips. Take your hands to your thighs or your shins or your ankles. And then inhale, slide your hands up. Exhale, slide your hands back down. Bend your knees deeply so your palms can get to the ground. And from there, we step back with our hook in our tailbone to our down dog. Remember, we're pushing the ground away. Now shift it into a plank, shoulders over wrists. We kind of rehearse this in a way. Bring your knees down further back in space than hands and knees. Shift a little bit forward so we keep that shoulder over wrist alignment, using the strength in our core that we found when we hovered our knees. Bend your elbows so they brush against your ribs, and in one piece we come onto our belly. Then uncurl your toes, press the tops of your feet into your mat, and find a Sphinx pose. So forearms parallel to the long edges of our mat. We'll traction our elbows towards us and feel our chest move through the gateway of our arms. So it's not a hinge at our neck. It's actually right there in what's called the thoracic band, where our shoulder blades are. Now lower down and bring your arms alongside you, palms face down. This gets trickier with not struggling through our neck. So imagine that you've got a little orange or tangerine underneath your chin, and you want to keep it there. You're not going to squeeze it and juice it, but you're not going to lose it either. Now push into your hands and lift just the heads of your arm bones. Think of collarbones smiling. So let them collapse, press into your hands, and feel them smile away. Now press into the tops of your feet and lift your kneecaps. You can keep that activity and float your hands off your mat. And now we feel what's called the posterior chain. That's our back body, and that too is our core. So we want to feel that we've just livened up what's going on in our back body. We're not struggling, and you give yourself a break anytime you'd like. Maybe some of us lengthen those legs off the ground, but if that starts to feel like too much in your low back, then you leave it behind. Let's lower down and make a pillow with our hands. Rest your forehead on your hands. Bend your knees. Windshield wiper your legs back and forth gently. It's a sweet little release for some posterior chain work, which is a good thing for us to do. Now, come back to that Sphinx arrangement of our arms and just scoot yourself back a little bit so you're not on top of those. Now, curl your toes under this time. Press into your hands. Let everything lift except for your knees. And let's make sure that we're not collapsed into our joints. Remember, we did that on our hands. Let's find that on our forearms. You can stay just like this, loads and loads of core work, or take your knees off your mat for a moment. That's a whole lot. Then bring your knees down, thighs down, hips down, and let's unravel into a little bit of a Sphinx for a second and have a chat, a core chat. So people start to think that it's just the six-pack that's core work, but trunk stability is all four sides of us. We are 360-degree creatures. We've now paid attention to our front body and back body. we'll get into our side body a little bit. But we need to keep that integrity in our upper body. So let's oomph into our arms and bring belly, hips, maybe even knees up off our mat. Now, if you're not doing knees off your mat, you can try with your knees down and just a little bit of a turn. But if you are lifting your knees off your mat, what we'll do is come to the outside of our right foot, inside of our left foot, holy cow, right? Come back through center, our feet are scissored, outside of left foot, inside of right foot. Then come down the middle, all of us carefully, slowly, knees down, and we roll and unravel into our Sphinx. Those are called your oblique muscles. It's sort of undeniable, I find, to discover them with this. Let's try that one more time. Curl your toes under, oomph into your arms, come up into, if it's modified, you'll just take it easy does it, right? If it's not, knees come off your mat and we just carefully, with both forearms down, roll to the outside of our left foot, inside of our right foot, and then back through center, outside of right foot, inside of left foot. And then down the middle, knees down, thighs down, hips down, belly down, and we are in our Sphinx. Uncurl your toes, slide your hands back next to your ribs. Feel a little bit of a cobra for a moment, and remember our posterior chain. So before we leave this, and we will flow our sun salutation with all of these goodies in our back pocket as we do, press into the tops of your feet, feel your kneecaps lift. And then just lift your hands ever so carefully in your cobra. Remember, we're not jutting our chin. And maybe lift your legs, and there's that posterior chain. We believe that we are 360-degree creatures. Hands down, feet down. Curl your toes under. Use that front core, actually all four sides of your core, but up onto all fours. Then our hips with that hook come to down dog, up and back. Now walk your feet forward to your hands. Feet are hip distance and parallel. Glide your hands up, inhale, lift your heart. Slide your hands down, exhale, we fold, but we lengthen. And then inhale, rise, reach thumbs to the sky, a V. We stand with our palms facing out. Let's flow, very slow, our sun salutation A with all this trunk awareness. Okay, inhale, V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips, hands to thighs, shins, or ankles. Inhale, uplift your heart, palms go flat. So we got to bend our knees deeply as we step it back. Hips are up and back. Then shift to your plank. Feel that core work already, knees down. Still core work as we lower all the way onto our belly. Uncurl your toes into your cobra pose. Maybe just because of what we're up to today, we take a moment to lift our hands and maybe even carefully lift our legs, lengthening our legs. Put it all down. Curl your toes under in one chunk, all fours. We come through all fours, and then our hips lift us up and back into downward facing dog. Walk your feet forward to your hands. Feet are hip distance. Glide your hands up, lift your heart, inhale. Slide your hands down, exhale as we fold, and then we rise, reach, thumbs to the sky, inhale. And we pause, palms facing out. Let's do that one more time. Inhale, V shape. Exhale, hands to thighs, shins, or ankles. Inhale, glide your hands up, bend your knees deeply, palms flat, step it to down dog. From down dog, we shift into plank. Our knees come to our mat. We use our core to go slowly all the way onto our belly. And then uncurl your toes. It could be Sphinx pose. It's probably Cobra pose today. Stay here if you'd like, or float your hands and maybe lengthen and float your legs just briefly. Hands and feet down, curl your toes under. We come through all fours, and then our hips lift us up and back into downward facing dog. From our downward facing dog, walk your feet forward all the way to your hands. Feet are hip distance. Inhale, lift your heart, slide your hands up. Exhale, fold in, sliding hands down, and then we rise, reach. Thumbs to the sky, a V, and we stand with our palms facing out. We want to arrange our blocks now. So your two blocks or books will go tall. to either side of the long edges of your mat. So on either side of you as you face the short edge. And if you're not using a mat, you're imagining something like that. This time it's a chair pose to get us started. So bend your knees deeply, sit back and down, and V-shape your arms up to the sky. Hands to your thighs, we'll fold and slide our hands down, but keep the length in our spine. Slide your hands up, inhale, lift your heart. Bend your knees, palms flat, step to down dog. In down dog, lift your right leg and step that right foot forward. Usually, most of us will need to help it along. For this first one especially, trot your blocks in. Feel as though instead of your right hip swinging out to the right, you have that right hip tucked underneath you. Add a little bend to your back knee, come upright, V-shape, crescent. Then we'll take our hands to our blocks and ultimately to our mat, so blocks off to the side, and then left leg lifts behind us. We step our left foot forward. If you need to help it along, you help it along. Blocks are a great way up. You might continue to use those every time. Bend your back knee, up we go, V-shape, thumbs to the sky, crescent pose, and then hands to our mat, or our blocks maybe on the way, and we step back to down dog. From down dog, shift to plank, shoulders over wrists. Bring your knees to your mat, lower in one piece. Remember our trunk stability all the way down into our cobra. Now if you like that little lift for a second for the posterior chain, you can do it or leave it out. Lower down, curl your toes under, come through all fours, and then let your tailbone lift you up and back into downward facing dog. Walk your feet forward to your hands. Our feet are hip distance. We'll slide our hands up and uplift our heart as we inhale. Slide our hands down as we fold, and then chair pose to take us out as well. So sit your hips way back and down, thumbs to the sky, and then we stand into our mountain. We'll do that and add a twist, literally. Chair pose, thumbs to the sky. Exhale, hands to thighs, shins or ankles as we fold. Inhale, slide your hands up, palms flat, down dog. From our down dog, lift your right leg and step that right foot forward. Help it along if it's something helpful. Let's take our hands to our blocks. Now, with our hands on our blocks or our books, left hand will stay down, right arm spins open. Remember those obliques that we talked about when we were doing our plank on our forearm shenanigans? What if we played with this idea? So remember, we're not swinging our right hip out. We want to tuck that behind us. What would happen if we just experimented with lifting our left hand off our block? So we're not using the block to make the twist happen. We're using our muscles to make the twist happen. Just an experiment. Then we'll unravel our hands to our blocks and move our blocks out of the way so that we can facilitate down dog with ease. And then left leg lifts behind us, and we step our left foot forward. Help it along if need be. Bring your hands to your blocks. And from here, once we stick our landing and we're not swinging our left hip out, we add right hand on our block and left arm up to the sky for our twist. And you probably are using what's called leverage, or a levered twist as you use your hand on your block. So what would happen if we just experimented and made it fun to float our right hand and to feel our muscles, just like we did in our plank on our forearms? And that can just be brief, like on and off. Then return your hands to your blocks, get them out of the way for your down dog. And from down dog, you could stay here. You could climb into the child's pose that we established at the very beginning, or come to a plank with your shoulders over your wrists. Bring your knees down in one piece, all the way to our belly. Uncurl your toes. Come into cobra. If you want a little lift for a second, it's up to you. We'll lower our hands and feet down, then curl our toes under, come through all fours. Our hips lift us up and back into down dog. From down dog, walk forward to your hands, feet are hip distance. Take your two blocks, inhale, lift your heart forward. Now pretend, as we're here with our hands elevated on our blocks and our feet hip distance and parallel, that we are doing that hands and knees that we started with. So we're not. collapsed into our joints. We're finding a pushing of the ground away, or in this case, our blocks or books away, and our trunk stability is responding. Stand on your right leg. Take your left leg back behind you. It's not an arabesque where we open our hip. I'm going to ask you to try to keep your left toes facing down, and you're welcome to add quite a bit of bend to your right knee. What I want is for us to find this a little bit free-floating too. So all that 360-degree core business we talked about, that's happening right here in order to keep our chest parallel to the ground. If you want or need to, you can keep your hands on your blocks, but what if we made a little prayer underneath our heart and found some balance? And we're trying to do that without a crumble to the ground, right? It's tricky, but fun. A couple more moments. Then step your left foot down. We're hip distance. Lift your heart, inhale. Let's remind ourselves not to collapse as we shift sides. So standing on your left leg, reach your right leg behind you. Remember, we're not opening up the hip and arabesquing, just because this keeps things a little bit clearer in what we're up to. Bend your left knee as much as you'd like. Find 360 degrees of your trunk stability. And then maybe we playfully make a little prayer under our heart, and then just see if we can find some balance and that core strength all at one time. And then you'll bring your hands to your blocks and your right foot hip distance from your left. Use your blocks to inhale and elongate, lifting your heart. Exhale, fold in, take your blocks off to the side. Inhale, rise, reach, thumbs to the sky, a V. And then we pause, palms facing out. Inhale, V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips, hands to thighs, shins or ankles. Inhale, uplift your heart. Palms flat, we step to down dog. From down dog, walk yourself through until you can lie down on your back. And once you're lying down on your back, most of us are going to sit on our hands. So that means lift your hips up a little bit with your head lying on your mat. Sit on your hands. And it might feel best for most of us to press our low back down into the ground a little bit. It's totally fine to have a little bit of an arch in your back, but if you're struggling, that's what we want to eliminate. So sitting on your hands should be helpful with that. With your knees bent, take your feet off your mat. Take your right leg straight up to the sky. It might be better with your left foot on the ground. You'll lower and hover your right leg, and then bring that back up to the sky. Let's switch sides. So left leg goes up, we bend our right knee. You might stamp your right foot down. I'm doing that at least to start. And then lower your left leg so it hovers. And bring that left leg back up to the sky. I'm giving you a few options here. Both legs can go up to the sky. You might decide to keep left leg straight up to the ceiling, right leg lowering down and then coming back up to meet your left leg. If that's too much in your lower back, stamp the opposite foot down. So in this case, when our left leg floats down, you might want to just keep your right foot on the ground and then bring that left leg up and switch legs. Make sense? So right leg up, and then right leg lowers, and it brings itself back up, and left leg lowers, and comes back up. If you prefer stamping your feet down, go for it. Right leg down, and then back up, and left leg down, and then back up. Keep both legs up to the sky. Scoot yourself off of your seat on your hands. Take your hands behind your head. Wide elbows. Lift your chest straight up to the sky. That's plenty if you want to experiment. Remember, all this is an experiment. You might take little pulses of your hips lifting up off the ground for a moment. If that gives you pain or just feels like more than you need, skip that part, no problem. And then lower your hips, bend your knees, lower your head, pause for a second, one hand on your heart, one hand on your low belly. Cross your right ankle on top of your left thigh. Flex that right foot. It's fine to stay just like this. Some of you will weave your right hand through the space and then give yourself a reclining pigeon hug. This is where we start to really feel ourselves sliding towards our Shavasana final meditation. And now we'll just gently release this side, plant our feet on our mat, take our left ankle on top of our right thigh. This is great. If you want, left hand will do the weaving through, and you interlace around either your right shin or your right hamstring. Sometimes a folded blanket underneath our head or a block underneath our head becomes a nice way to not struggle in our neck when we bump up against some tightness in various postures like this one. Gently release both feet onto your mat, and then walk your feet as wide as your mat and let your knees fall knock-kneed towards each other. Lift your hips 1 inch to create a little bit of space and feel like both hips lower at the same time. So after some asymmetrical work, there's a symmetry. Tuck one shoulder blade and then the other underneath you, and you might just stay like this for our Shavasana final meditation. Or extend one leg and then the other. If you're comfortable with closing your eyes, close your eyes. You might even cover them. A soft gaze is great too. And then we rest and digest. You're welcome to stay in your Shavasana final meditation as long as you'd like. If it's time, let's wiggle our fingers and toes, collect our knees into our chest, roll gently to either side, and then come up to any comfortable way to sit. We take a moment, grateful that we have this practice, this way in which we can practice together. I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for taking the time to do your yoga with me today.